Welcome to the Destiny Awakening Interviews, a podcast with Andrew Wayfinder and his guests, bringing you powerful insights, inspiration, and ways to break free, live life your way, and make a difference in our changing and challenging world.
So, hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to another edition of the Destiny Awakening Interviews. I'm Andrew Wayfinder Renievich, and I'm joined today by Tracy Fox, serial entrepreneur, executive coach, 4 times best-selling author, and speaker. So a very warm welcome to you, Tracy. And where are you hanging out today?
Thank you. I am in a place called Darien, Connecticut. It's about an hour north of New York City, a suburb of New York.
Okay, great. And how's the weather there? Is it like Texas?
Today it's beautiful. It's 50 degrees, but it has been a lot of snow and a lot of freezing cold. And I said to my husband this morning, I'm never spending February here again. It's long and it's cold. And with COVID, it's been pretty miserable all around. So yeah.
Yeah, it's been a year.
Yes, it has.
Okay, so let's get on to the subject of the books you've written and the work you do. So while Tracy has an official bio, which includes her 20 plus years of business experience and her NYU executive coaching certification, I'm actually going to skip it for what one of her clients wrote about her, which was, Tracy has helped me grow professionally in ways I never thought I would grow into a human I never thought I could become, and care for individuals in a way I didn't know that I was capable of doing. Her strategies will last you a lifetime, and I recommend Tracy to my closest and dearest loved ones. Everyone needs a Tracy Fox in their life. So I thought that was, much more interesting, much more interesting than your bio, than the front one. So the title today is Personal Power to Create Results and Happiness. And Tracy's going to unpack that idea in answering 6 questions. So the first question would be, who is your ideal client, and what's the transformation that your work helps them achieve?
Well, I sort of always say my ideal client is a CEO, but not in the traditional sense, because I believe we're all CEOs. So whether you're the CEO of your household, you're a mom just trying to raise kids, or whether you're the CEO of a school, you're a principal who's looking after staff and children, or whether you are in fact a CEO of a multi-million-dollar business, to me, it's all the same. It's people who are, highly successful, highly educated, and usually highly stressed because they have so much going on. That's sort of my ideal client. And the transformation I always try to work on is helping them design the life that they want, because what often happens with highly successful, highly busy people is they're just on the rat race and they're not stepping back and designing a life. They are reacting to life all the time. And that gets people into a lot of trouble, and it definitely does not end up in a joyful place. It may end up in a super successful place, but I talk to so many people who say, Tracy, I have everything, and yet I have never had a happy day in my life. And to me, that is just a waste of what, we're all doing here.
I agree. So that actually, you've probably answered the second question, but I'll ask it again. What is the biggest challenge they face?
Well, I think the biggest challenge they face is, yes, they don't have personal happiness, but I even think it's bigger than that. I think the biggest challenge they face is not believing they can do anything about it. That the power is always in somebody else's hands, because all day long I coach a lot of people, and what I will hear is the refrain, it is what it is. I am who I am. There's really nothing I can do about it. Yes, I'm talking to you, or yes, I've talked to a therapist, but there's no core belief that they have the power to change their life. And where I come in, and actually I'm very gifted, is in helping them look at that completely differently. So the transformation takes place in their thinking that things are actually possible. Whereas before, not only did they not believe they were possible, they didn't have the tools. And so a lot of the people I coach have a pattern and a trend of always being in therapy and always talking to somebody. What I try to do is say, no, we're going to have like a boot camp. And I usually only work with clients 8 to 12 weeks. And in that boot camp period, not only are we changing their thinking, which of course changes their outcome, but I'm also leaving them with tools to set them up for success for the rest of their life. And yes, do they want to check in on occasion? Refresher for sure, but we're not sticking together for years and years and years.
Yeah. Okay.
Because that to me, that's not personal empowerment, to always
Mhm.
be
Yeah, yeah, no,
relying on someone else for your answers.
yeah, no, and speaking as a therapist turned sort of spiritual, energetic healer and coach,
Mm.
therapy has its role, but it often becomes it can become very confining.
Exactly. And it should be like, I agree. It should be a grace period. I'm all for therapy, but it has to be a grace period, not I'm just always connected to that and I can never stand on my own 2 feet. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So question number 3, what's the number one insight you would can share with the audience to help them right now if they're wrestling with these sorts of challenges?
I think the insight is you have to take the time and reflect on what you really want. And again, most people, in my opinion, get up in the morning and they start their day, they race to their computer, they race to the next thing, and they are not designing their life. And, the true insight, and I say this a lot, is that we always have to remember that we're different than the animal kingdom, right? I mean, animals get up and they just do what they do. They're in survival mode. They don't get to choose. Whereas we as humans, and it's an obvious thing, but we get to choose separate from circumstance. And I think so many people forget that level of personal power, that separate from circumstance, like you can lose your job, you can be in the midst of a crisis at home, but you always have the power to do something about it. And people don't think that way. And so what I'm always trying to have people have an insight around is as you change your thinking, you can change your life. And it goes back to personal power. And I know I sound like Tony Robbins, but it's absolutely true.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
question number 4, what concept, book, program, or talk has had the greatest impact on you
Well, I
and your
wasn't sure if
experience?
this question meant something I've written or if it was somebody else's book.
Well,
So I'm
it's
going to actually speak of it from 2 different points of view. I would say the first book that ever changed my life, and I actually, my book called Happy Self is an ode to the first book I was ever given, which did change my life, which is called The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. And he outlines in that book about how your thinking leads to your actions, your thinking leads to your belief system, which leads to your actions, which leads to your destiny. So in other words, if I get up in the morning and I think nothing good ever happens to me, this life, blows, and I just start down that thing, then, well, what's my action going to be? My action's going to be, well, what's the point even leaving the house? And then what's my destiny going to be, right? I'm not going to be successful and I'm definitely not going to be happy. But if I even change that thought to, I get up in the morning and I say, all things are possible. I'm really believing there's a plan for my life and this is an amazing journey, right? Then my belief system is all things are possible. And if all things are possible, then I'm out and about making things happen. And if I'm making things happen, then I have always an amazing destiny and amazing opportunities. So everything goes back to the key philosophy is, as I think, so shall I be. So
hmm
I was given that book by Norman Vincent Peale. And then, fast forward 40 years, when I wanted to start writing books, I wrote a book called Happy Self. And the premise of that book is, again, that so many of us are in reactive mode. And I look at that as, it's sort of horizontal living, where you're just sort of looking around and reacting to things. And I think we need to live vertically. And I explain in the book as a very simple concept that you should live by a core set of principles. That should be your base. And so the principle might be, I only repay, anything that comes my way with kindness. That could be a principle you live by. So whatever principles, you want to establish for your life. And then the second piece of that is knowing yourself. So many people don't take the time to know themselves. And then, of course, if you don't know yourself, you actually can't love yourself. And I can't tell you how many people I work with, although they're highly successful, they don't have self-esteem and they definitely don't have self-worth or self-love. So there's the second part. And then the top part is you must connect to your higher power through spiritual,
hmm
ways. And so that can be anything from prayer to meditation to an actual religion where you go to church, whatever it might be. But so it's living by core principles, knowing and loving yourself, and connecting through spiritual practices to a higher power. And that's what the book Happy Self is really all about.
Great. And that leads us to, so what's the free resource you'd like to share with the audience that will help them?
So, I mean, there's a couple. One would be you go to my website, tracyfox.net, and on there I have a bunch of stuff. But the main free resource is my podcast called Happy Self, where it's all about, I'm sort of giving away all my tips and tricks and all the things I would do in coaching or I would be writing about in a book. I'm giving it away for free. And so I talk about everything from the 4 keys to happiness to, that would be my first one. And I just did one yesterday. We're on our 40th episode of, how to have strong boundaries so you can have great relationships. Mm-hmm. So all the free resources are at my website, but the easiest one is the Happy Self podcast, because there it is. It's free and it's starting to get a good listenership, and all my tips and tricks are there.
Okay, great. And then the last question is, what should I have asked you that I didn't?
Yeah, I had to think about that a lot. And I think it goes back to identity, that we all need to think about who we are, because we all operate out of our own identity. And I even talk about this a lot. I do a lot of marriage coaching as well. And, so many people don't identify their marriages as important, or they don't identify themselves as important. So if you don't identify something as important, then you're not going to treat it well. And so I think it's really important that everybody think about who they are, what their purpose is. And, I started my book, Happy Self, with a quote about life is a gift. It's a one-time offer. Use it well. Like literally, we're not coming back. And if we are, we're not coming back as the same person in the same time. And every day, this life is getting shorter. So you have to figure out, who are you? What's your purpose here? And then you have to live from that identity. And I don't care if that's living, again, as a mom or as a married person or as a billionaire CEO. To me, it's all the same. Who are you? What's your main purpose here? And you have to live from that identity if you want to have joy and happiness and also success.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me of sort of one of my favorite essays in the world. It was by Thomas Merton, where he said the purpose of an education is to save your soul by helping you answer 3 questions. Who am I? What is my gift to the world? And how do I make that offering valid? And I think the third one is probably the hardest, is how do you take your essence and this gift and bring it into form? I think it's where we get the struggling artist and the tortured creator and the frustrated business owner, and but they're all important questions, and I think you've really nailed them.
Well, and I think you bring up a great point, which is we get so caught up, right, in all those things. But if we just live from a place of, I sort of talk about your divine duty. Your divine duty, no matter what your gift is to not keep it small, but to offer it to the world and then let the results lay where they may. And I think that's just such an easier path to just, here's my gift, whatever it is, I'm going to put it out there and I'm going to see, what the feedback will be, as opposed to what we're talking about, which is being always in that piece of struggling. And, there's a piece of it about faith. And of course, that's where Thomas Merton comes in, but the faith piece of it, that if I do the work, that there will be a time where, I get the feedback that I deserve. Yeah.
Well, and I think also the idea that the work is actually its own.
Exactly. So well said. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's perfect, Tracy. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Destiny Awakening interviews. If you have a friend who would benefit, please share and subscribe to the show on iTunes and leave a review. We really appreciate it. And remember, always use your power for good.